A desperate family offers their blind daughter to a feared, brutal vampire to save themselves, expecting her to be broken or killed. But one unexpected night in the stables reveals the monster's hidden mercy and a secret that flips their fate, turning a sacrifice into the start of a dangerous bond. Some stories get told like legends, with monsters and curses and neat little morals at the end. But the night I'm about to describe didn't feel like a legend at all. It felt like cold air in the lungs, like shaking hands, like a girl trying to breathe quietly so nobody would hear her fear. The last thing Elara remembered of her home was the sound of her mother's tears hitting her sleeve as they hugged, and the way her father's voice kept breaking as he promised, over and over, that this was the only way to save the village. The carriage that carried her north smelled of damp wool and old wood. Its wheels groaned like tired animals, and every bump in the road traveled up through the seat into Alara's ribs. She couldn't see the trees flashing past, but she could hear them. The forest made a constant whispering, as if the leaves were speaking a language only the wind understood. Alara sat very straight, hands folded in her lap the way she'd practiced when she was little and still trying to prove she didn't need help. Blindness had taught her to count her breaths, to measure rooms by echoes, to sense moods by the smallest shifts in someone's voice. But nothing had prepared her for the silence that came whenever the men in the carriage said the vampire king's name. "Oh, Valerius." They didn't call him king like it was an honor. They said it like it was a storm. "Elara," her father murmured beside her, trying to sound steady. His cloak brushed her knuckles, familiar and rough with patches he'd sewn himself. "When we arrive, you must speak politely. You must not challenge him." "I'm not a child," she said softly because she needed to hear her own courage out loud. "And I'm not made of glass." Her father exhaled and she heard the shame in it. Shame had a sound, thin, scraped, like a knife dragged too slowly across stone. "I know," he whispered. "That's what makes this worse." It had started with hunger, then taxes, then winter that refused to end. Their village had begged the crown for grain and guards, but the crown was far away and full of excuses. The only thing close enough to answer was the dark fortress in the northern hills, where Valerius ruled a land no one dared enter. They said he demanded tribute, not gold, when a village was desperate. They said he took what would hurt the most, because monsters loved pain. And so the village elders chose Elara. Not because she was blind, Elara told herself bitterly, not because they thought she was lesser, but because they thought she was safer to lose, a gentle sacrifice, a quiet one. Her mother had tried to fight it, her father had tried to bargain, but the hunger in their neighbors' eyes had been louder than love. As night fell, the carriage slowed, the air changed. It grew sharper, cleaner like snow over iron. Alara tilted her face toward the faintest draft slipping through the carriage seams. She caught the scent of pine, then stone, then something else beneath it, subtle and strange, like old roses pressed inside a book. Arriving, one of the escorts muttered. The gates did not creak like in the stories. They opened smoothly, almost silently, as if the fortress itself was holding its breath. Alara listened for jeers, for the taunting laughter of cruel servants, for the hiss of something hungry. Instead, she heard footsteps, measured and controlled, and the low murmur of a torch being adjusted. A voice spoke near the carriage door. "Bring her carefully. If she stumbles, it will be your fault." It wasn't the voice Elara expected. It didn't drip with menace. It carried authority, yes, and a kind of cold restraint, but also discipline, like someone who refused to let the world turn him into what it wanted him to be. Hands reached in, not rough hands, gloved, warm from being near fire. Elara accepted the offered arm, stepping down. The ground was even, swept clean. No one tried to yank her along or test her helplessness. For a heartbeat, the absence of cruelty felt more frightening than cruelty itself. It made her wonder what the kindness was buying. They led her through a hall where her footsteps changed from gravel to polished stone. Sound traveled differently here, blooming and returning like a whisper thrown into a well. Above her, something chimed gently, wind bells, maybe soft notes that made the darkness feel less empty. "Your cloak," the same voice said. "It's open, you'll catch cold." Elara froze. The speaker was close enough that she could feel the faintest shift of air as he moved. He didn't touch her. He didn't assume permission. He simply waited. Her throat tightened. Are you a servant? A pause, then a quiet reply. No. The word carried the faintest hint of amusement, like a candle flame stubbornly surviving in a windy room. Then who are you? Elara asked, keeping her chin lifted. She de-promised herself she would not sound like prey. The answer came so calmly it made her stomach twist. Valerius. The vampire king. Elara's pulse stumbled. All the stories rushed into her mind, fangs, crimson mouths, laughter in the dark. She didn't feel any of that. She felt stillness, like standing too close to deep water. Her father's breath caught behind her. His knees hit stone. He was kneeling. Your Majesty, her father whispered, voice shaking. We have brought what you asked. Please, please spare the village. Elara wanted to grab him, to pull him up, to tell him he didn't have to kneel for anyone, but she didn't move. She couldn't, because the air had changed again, thick with her father's fear and the weight of what was happening. Valerius did not speak for a moment. When he finally did, his voice lowered, and there was something in it Elara didn't know how to name, tiredness maybe, or disappointment. Stand, Valerius said, not to her father, but to the guards. All of you, no groveling on my floors. This is a house, not a temple. Her father hesitated. Elara felt his trembling through the air like heat. I said stand, Valerius repeated, firmer now, and Elara heard the scrape of boots as men obeyed quickly. Then Valerius addressed Elara directly, as if her father wasn't there at all. Elara of Briar Hollow. Well, she stiffened. How do you know my name? I know many names, he replied. I know the names people say when they're starving and trying not to cry. That sentence landed like a stone in her chest. It wasn't poetic, it was too real. Elara forced herself to speak. If you're going to punish my village, punish me, don't make them watch. Silence stretched. In that silence, Elara caught something else, faint, rhythmic like a heartbeat but slower, controlled, like someone holding himself back. Finally, Valerius said, You believe you've been sent here to die. Elara swallowed. Isn't that the point? A soft exhale, no. The single word made her dizzy. No threat, no clever cruelty, no game, just no. Elara's fingers curled against the hem of her dress. Then what am I to you? There was a longer pause this time. When Valerius spoke again, his voice had gone quieter, rougher at the edges, as if he'd stepped barefoot onto something sharp. A responsibility, he said. Responsibility, not possession, not food. The guards escorted Elara's parents out. Her mother sobbed a final goodbye, clutching Elara's hands so tightly it hurt, as if pain could anchor her daughter back to the world she knew. Elara let her mother hold on until the last possible moment. Then the door shut, and the echo of it seemed to travel through the entire fortress. Elara stood alone in a dark she couldn't see but could feel. Valerius remained close enough that she sensed him, like a shadow with weight. Why a blind girl? She demanded, anger finally finding its voice. Was I chosen because I'm easy to break? No, Valerius said immediately, and there was something sharp in the word, like he'd struck a wall with his bare hand. You were chosen because your village thinks kindness is weakness. They think the world only understands force. Elara laughed once bitter, and you're here to prove them right. Valerius didn't answer that. Instead, he said, Your room is on the east side, warmer. There are wind chimes outside the window so you can find it by sound. I had them hung for you. Elara's anger faltered in confusion. You prepared. You will not be touched without permission, Valerius continued, voice controlled again. You will be fed well, you will be treated as a guest. A guest doesn't get traded, Elara snapped. A guest doesn't get abandoned either, he replied, and the quietness of it was more unsettling than a shout. And you are not abandoned here. Before Elara could decide whether to believe him, a new sound cut through the corridor, urgent footsteps, the clatter of a latch, a servant's voice strained with panic. "Your Majesty," the servant gasped. "The stables, one of the horses has broken loose. It's terrified. It kicked the lantern stand and—" Valerius moved so fast the air shifted hard against Elara's cheek. "Get water," he ordered, and suddenly his calm was steel. "Clear the hay away from the doors. No one strikes the animal. No one." The servant scrambled away. Elara stood in the hall, pulse racing, hearing distant thuds and frantic voices. A horse screaming, not like a human scream, but close enough to freeze blood in the veins. She knew that sound. She'd grown up around animals. She knew fear when she heard it. Without thinking, Elara stepped forward. A guard blocked her. "Stay here." "I can help," she insisted. The guard started, then stopped himself, the word blind hanging unsaid but present like smoke. "I'm not made of glass," Elara said again, firmer now. "I can calm horses, I can listen, I can." Valerius's voice cut in, low and immediate. "Let her pass." The guard hesitated. "Your Majesty." "Let her pass," Valerius repeated, and this time it wasn't a request. Elara followed the sound of chaos down a stone corridor that grew warmer with each step. The smell of smoke met her halfway, thin, not yet dangerous, but rising. Beneath it was the sweet scent of hay and animals and leather. When they reached the stable entrance, the noise swelled. Hooves pounding, wood splintering, men shouting and failing to sound brave. Elara lifted her hand slightly, orienting herself by echo and smell. Then, in the midst of it all, she heard something that didn't belong. A voice. Not an order, not a threat. A murmured, steady lullaby in a language Elara didn't know, sung low enough that it was meant for one frightened creature and no one else. The stable fell quieter, as if even the men were holding their breath to listen. Elara took one step inside the stable, the heat of lanterns and bodies washing over her. The horse whinnied again, but it sounded less wild now, less trapped. The lullaby continued, and Elara realized with a shock that it wasn't coming from a stable hand. It was Valerius. And there was something else in his voice, something that made Elara's throat tighten painfully. It sounded like grief. Elara moved toward the sound, careful, feeling the edge of a stall with her fingertips. Straw crunched under her shoes. The air tasted of smoke and fear and something metallic she didn't want to name. Then Valerius's singing stopped abruptly. Elara heard a sharp inhale, like he'd just noticed her presence. "Elara," he said, and her skin prickled. "You shouldn't be here." "I followed your voice," she whispered. A beat of silence. Then, in the darkness of the stable, Valerius spoke again, softer now, and the words landed like a door opening in a locked house. "I know what happened to your eyes," he said, "and I swear to you I did not bring you here to take anything else." Elara's breath caught hard. Her hands trembled against the wooden stall. "How," she managed, voice breaking, "could you possibly know that?" Valerius didn't answer right away. When he finally did, his voice was so close it felt like winter landing in. "Because," he said, "the night you lost your sight, I was there." And at that moment, the frightened horse slammed into the stall again, the lantern light flared, and Elara felt the sudden rush of heat and smoke surge toward them, like the stable itself was about to reveal a truth neither of them could outrun. Smoke thickened in the stable like a living thing, crawling along the beams and pressing against every breath. Elara felt it first in her throat, then in the way the air turned hot and bitter, and she knew, without seeing a single flame, that fear could become disaster in seconds if people panicked. The horse slammed again, wood cracking, and men shouted over each other. Someone tried to rush the stall, and Elara heard Valerius's voice cut through the noise like a blade drawn clean from a sheath. "No one crowds him," Valerius ordered. "Give him space, give him air." A bucket clanged to the ground, boots ran, water splashed. The chaos didn't vanish, but it gained shape as if Valerius had taken the wildness by the collar and forced it to stand still. Elara moved forward anyway, one careful step at a time, her palms sliding along the stall's rough edge. The heat grew stronger near the corner where the lantern stand had fallen. Straw crackled softly, too soft to be safe, and she smelled singed hay, the warning scent that came before a larger burn. Elara, Valerius said again, closer now, his voice low, urgent in a way that didn't sound like anger. It sounded like worry he didn't want anyone to notice. Stop. I won't be in the way, she whispered back. Tell me where the horse is. A pause, then quieter as if he was choosing humility over control, Valerius answered, 3 steps to your left. His head is turned toward the door. He's trapped by sound, not walls. That sentence told her everything about him. He didn't only see the animal, he understood it. Elara took the 3 steps, breath shallow. The horse's breathing was loud and ragged, and when he snorted, warm air hit her wrist. She lifted her hands slowly, fingers spread, letting him find her first. It's all right, she said, not in a sweet voice, but in a steady one. You're not bad, you're just scared. The horse stamped and tossed his head, but he didn't strike. Elara listened to the rhythm of him, the way his hooves drummed the ground like a heart trying to escape its own cage. She matched her breathing to his, slower and slower, until the stable's roar felt a little less sharp. Valerius spoke behind her, giving short instructions to the men. Water on the straw first, not the beams, pull the lantern away. Now. A servant coughed violently. Someone else panicked and yelled, fire. Elara didn't move her hands. Easy, she murmured to the horse, as if the whole world were only the 2 of them. Listen to me, you can follow my voice. She took a risk and stepped closer. Her fingers brushed the horse's muzzle, then his cheek. His skin twitched with tension, but there was no bite, no kick, just trembling. Well, he leaned into her touch. For a moment, one strange, almost funny moment in the middle of danger, Elara realized the mighty beast was behaving like a frightened child who had finally found someone calm enough to hold his fear for him. She couldn't help a shaky smile. Oh, that's it, she breathed. Good, you're good. The horse's breathing softened. His hooves stopped hammering. And in the sudden quiet, Elara noticed something else. Valerius's breathing had changed. It was controlled, but too tight, like the smoke was hurting him more than it should. He hid it well, but Elara had spent her whole life hearing the truths people tried to swallow. You're staying too close to the smoke, she said without turning. Silence, then a reply that was almost careless on purpose. I've been close to worse. That's not an answer, she pressed gently, surprising herself. She had arrived here expecting to survive a monster. Instead, she was scolding a king like he was just a stubborn man. Valerius didn't argue. He shifted position, and the air cooled slightly near Elara's face as if he'd stepped away from the worst of it. You should be proud, he said, voice lowered so only she could hear. Most people try to control a frightened creature with force. You used patience. Elara's throat tightened. Praise from her parents had been warm. Praise from Valerius felt dangerous, like standing at the edge of something deep and not knowing whether it would hold you or take you under. Water hit straw again. The crackle quieted. The smell of smoke faded inch by inch, chased out by wet hay and clean air seeping in through open doors. Only when the stable was safe did Elara finally turn her head toward Valerius's voice. She couldn't see him, but she felt his presence the way you feel a storm settle on the horizon, immense, controlled, and heavy with things unspoken. You said you were there, she reminded him, her voice small despite her effort. The night I lost my sight. The stable hands moved away, suddenly busy with anything that wasn't listening. Even guards knew when not to inhale someone else's secrets. Valerius didn't speak at first, then he said very quietly, not here. He guided her out of the stable with a hand hovering near her elbow, never grabbing, never pushing. It was an odd kind of restraint, like his power was so absolute that he didn't need to prove it. They walked through a corridor that smelled of stone cooled by centuries. Somewhere nearby, water dripped in a steady rhythm. Elara counted steps without thinking. It was how she kept fear from multiplying in her chest. Valerius led her into a room that felt different the moment she crossed the threshold. The air was warmer. There was the dry scent of books and ink, and a faint trace of cedar, like an old chest that held something carefully protected. He shut the door. The sound was soft, final. "Oh, you're safe," he said. Elara didn't sit. She didn't know if her knees would cooperate. "Tell me the truth." Valerius drew in a slow breath. "That night your village was attacked on the East Road." Elara went still. Her mind flashed not with images, but with sounds she'd never forgotten. Shouting in the distance, a window breaking, her mother praying too fast, her father's boots thudding as he ran toward danger. And then the sharp, white pain behind her eyes that had turned the world into endless dark. "I remember the screaming," she whispered. "I remember someone lifted me." Valerius's voice tightened. "I lifted you." The room seemed to narrow around her. Elara's hands curled into fists, nails biting her palms. "So it was you." Yes," he said, "but not the way your village believes." Elara laughed once brittle. "They believe you took my sight." "They're wrong," Valerius said, and there was something raw beneath his calm now, something that sounded like a man who had been punished for the crime of existing. "I stopped the men who hurt your family. I carried you to the well so your mother could wash your face. I left before your father returned because if they had seen me, they would have attacked me and I would have had to defend myself." He paused, and when he spoke again, it was quieter, almost ashamed. "And if I had defended myself, they would have called it proof that I am what they fear." Alara's chest ached with confusion so sharp it bordered on anger. "Then why didn't you tell them? Why didn't you speak?" Valerius's answer came like a confession. "Because kindness from a monster is not received as kindness. It becomes a story they twist until it fits their terror." Elara swallowed. She wanted to call him a liar. She wanted to hate him because hatred would be simpler than this heavy, complicated possibility. Valerius moved to a table. She heard a drawer open. Then he returned and something was placed gently into her hands. "A ribbon." It was old, soft with wear, and it carried a faint scent she recognized so instantly her breath snagged, lavender and flower dust and the smoke of her mother's kitchen hearth. Her mother used to tie it around Elara's wrist when she was little, so Elara wouldn't drift too far in crowds. Elara's fingers trembled as she traced the frayed edge. This was mine." "I kept it," Valerius said, "not as a trophy, as proof, for the day someone brave enough would ask me the truth." The room seemed to tilt. Elara pressed the ribbon to her chest like it could stitch something back together inside her. "You demanded me as tribute," she whispered. "If you're capable of this, why take me at all?" Valerius's silence was longer this time, and it carried a weight that made Alara's skin prickle. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed. It wasn't just tired now, it was guarded. "Because I didn't take you," he said, "I protected you." Alara's head lifted. "From what?" Valerius didn't answer immediately. Instead, he crossed the room and opened a window a fraction, letting in cold night air as if he needed it to steady himself. Then, in a tone that held both warning and regret, he said, "There are rules in my court. Old rules, cruel rules dressed up as tradition." Elara's mouth went dry. "Your court wants me." "Yes," Valerius admitted. "They wanted a human brought here to prove I still inspire fear, to prove I'm still worthy of the crown." Elara felt the ribbon slip slightly in her grasp. "And if you do?" "Then they will choose someone else to wear the crown," Valerius said, voice low. "Someone who won't hesitate to make your village pay for the insult of my softness." The softness, as if mercy were a flaw. Alara's stomach turned. She had been angry at her village for sacrificing her, but now she understood something even worse. The sacrifice might not have been meant to save them at all. It might have been meant to trap Valerius, force him to become the monster people already believed in. A knock hit the door, sharp and formal. Valerius didn't flinch, but Elara heard the instant tension in him like a string pulled tight. A messenger spoke through the wood. "Your Majesty, the Crimson Council has arrived earlier than expected. Valerius's voice went cold. So soon. They request an audience, the messenger continued, and they request to meet the human girl tonight. Elara's heart began to pound. The room suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. She clutched the ribbon and her voice came out fragile despite her effort. What happens if they meet me? Valerius stepped close enough that Elara could feel the chill of him, like moonlight on stone. When he spoke, it was not as a king giving orders, but as a man asking for trust he knew he didn't deserve yet. You will hear lies, he said. You will feel fear. They will try to make you doubt what you already know in your bones. Elara forced herself to stand taller. And what do you need from me? Valerius hesitated, just once, then answered with a quiet honesty that hit harder than any threat. I need you, he said, to hold my mercy steady when they try to tear it out of me. Elara's breath caught. Somewhere far down the corridor, doors opened, footsteps approached, and voices like silk-covered knives drifted closer. Valerius gently closed Elara's fingers around the ribbon, as if sealing a promise. Whatever happens next, he whispered, stay near me, and if I tell you to run, you run. Before Elara could respond, the door began to open, slowly, deliberately, revealing the first whisper of a presence that felt older than the fortress itself. And the voice that followed was smooth, pleased, and cruel in the most polite way. So, the stranger purred, this is the girl you've been hiding from us. The corridor filled with perfume and candle smoke, the kind meant to hide the scent of fear. Elara stood beside Valerius as the footsteps approached, slow, confident, measured, like people who believed the world belonged to them simply because they had survived longer than everyone else. When the door opened fully, the room didn't feel brighter. It felt colder. Elara couldn't see the newcomers, but she heard them clearly. Jeweled rings clicking against goblets, silk sleeves brushing stone, the soft pause before each breath as if breathing itself was a privilege they granted the air. So, the smooth voice purred again, closer now, this is the girl you've been hiding from us. Valerius didn't rise to the bait. His tone was calm, almost bored, but Elara heard the restraint under it like a hand gripping the edge of a cliff. Her name is Elara. Speak it like you're in my house. A soft laugh answered him. Your house, the stranger repeated, tasting the words, and yet you let a human walk through your halls as if she belongs. Another voice joined, older, drier, edged with impatience. The villages whisper Valerius. They say the vampire king has grown gentle. They say he collects wounded things. Elara felt the insult like a slap, not because it was aimed at her, but because it tried to turn kindness into a weakness. She kept her chin lifted anyway, the way she did when people forgot she could hear pity in their silence. Valerius shifted slightly closer, not touching her, but placing himself where the room had to acknowledge him before it could reach her. If you came to admire my charity, you've wasted your night. The first voice hummed, we came to measure your crown. A chair scraped, someone sat without permission. The sound of confidence was heavy. Elara swallowed and whispered, just enough for Valerius to hear, how many? 5, Valerius murmured back, stay steady. The word steady grounded her more than any promise of protection. It wasn't a command to be small, it was a request to be strong with him. The stranger's voice, sweet as polished glass, drifted toward Elara. Poor thing, tell me, child, do you know why you were brought here? Elara felt a trap in that question, the kind that tries to make you answer wrong no matter what you say. She didn't rush. She didn't apologize for existing. I was traded, she said plainly. My village was desperate. A quiet chorus of approval moved through the room, like predators pleased when prey admits it understands the rules. And do you know, the stranger continued, what desperate offerings are for? Valerius's voice turned sharp. Enough. But Elara lifted one hand slightly, a small signal she was not breaking. She wanted to speak, Not because she was fearless, she wasn't, but because she had learned something in the stable. Fear grows when it has no words to sit inside. I know what the stories say, Elara replied. They say he's cruel, they say he takes what he wants. The room went still, listening. Elara turned her face toward Valerius's presence, then back toward the council. But I've also learned stories can be lazy. They repeat what people expect, not what is true. A soft sound, someone leaning forward, interest. The older voice scoffed, "You're blind, you don't know truth, you know what you're told." Alara's fingers curled at her side. For half a heartbeat, shame tried to rise in her throat out of habit, like it always had when people spoke about her instead of to her. Then she remembered her mother tying lavender ribbons around her wrist, not to mark her as weak, but to keep her brave in a crowded world. Elara spoke slowly, clearly. Being blind taught me something you should envy. I don't mistake a beautiful face for a beautiful soul. A breath of surprise went through the room. The stranger laughed, but there was a thinness under it now. Bold, you should be careful with boldness here. Valerius didn't move, but Elara felt the air around him change, like the room had gained an invisible wall. She will not be threatened in my presence, he said, each word measured. If you need entertainment, hunt your own boredom elsewhere. The stranger's tone stayed pleasant. Threatened? No, we only want to see what you've become. There was a soft clink, and Elara realized someone had placed a cup on a nearby table. The scent that reached her wasn't wine. It was darker, metallic sweet, and the very idea of it made her stomach twist. Drink, the stranger said lightly, a courtesy, a welcome. Valerius's voice snapped like a door slamming. She doesn't drink that. Does, the stranger echoed, or you won't let her. Elara didn't reach for the cup. She didn't need to. She recognized the game. If she refused, she'd be called ungrateful. If she accepted, she'd be used as proof that Valerius corrupted her. Either way, they wanted her smaller. So she chose a third option. I won't drink what I don't want, Elara said. Not for you, not for anyone. The air tightened. For the first time, the stranger's voice lost a bit of its silk. You speak as if you have choices. Alara's heart beat hard, but she kept her voice steady. I do, even now. Valerius exhaled softly, and Elara felt something strange behind it, relief and a warning he couldn't say aloud. The older council member spoke again, cutting in with a colder kind of authority. Enough games, Valerius, the villages have grown insolent. Your mercy has taught them they can bargain with you. That ends tonight. Alara's village has already paid, Valerius replied. By giving us a girl who can't even see the face of her king, the elder snapped. This is not tribute, this is mockery. Alara's throat tightened. She could hear her father's shaking voice begging at the gates. She could hear her mother's sob. She could hear the village's hunger turning into a weapon. Valerius said, low and dangerous, they didn't mock me, they survived. The stranger's voice returned, smooth and bright. Survival is not innocence. We propose a correction, a lesson that will travel farther than grain. Valerius didn't answer, and that silence was scarier than a shout. Elara took one careful step forward, then stopped. I need to say something, she announced, surprising herself with the firmness in her tone. About the night I lost my sight. The room shifted, someone's breath caught. Someone else went very still, as if afraid her words might carry a spark. Valerius's voice went quiet, warning, Elara. I remember being lifted, she continued, not letting fear steal her sentence. I remember a voice that didn't sound like hatred. I remember being carried away from danger, and that voice was his. For a heartbeat, the entire hall seemed to stop breathing. Then the elder council member laughed, short, cruel, triumphant. A touching tale, the monster saved a child, how convenient. The stranger spoke more softly now, as if speaking to a pet. He saved you so you would owe him, so you would defend him. You were a seed planted in human soil. Alara's cheeks burned. Doubt tried to claw its way up her spine because doubt was easy and familiar. But she thought of the stable again, of Valerius ordering no one strikes the animal, of him singing to a terrified horse when no one was watching. Dat didn't sing lullabies. Elara turned slightly toward Valerius. May I? She asked quietly. Oh, he hesitated. What do you want? Oh, to touch your hand, she said, just for a moment. The room made a low sound, mockery, scandal, hunger for anything intimate they could twist. Elara stood perfectly still and waited for Valerius to decide, because she would not steal permission from anyone, not even a king. After a long beat, Valerius extended his hand. Elara reached out and found his gloved fingers. They were cold, yes, but there was a tremor there, faint and controlled, like someone holding back a storm. She felt it and understood it instantly. This wasn't a king enjoying power. This was a king carrying it carefully. Elara turned her face toward the council. He could force you to obey, she said. I can feel how much he holds back. If you call that weakness, then you have never been truly strong. The elder council member's voice sharpened. Careful, girl. Elara's voice shook, but she didn't retreat. No, you be careful, because the kind of king who restrains himself is the kind who can still choose mercy. And if you kill mercy, you won't get strength. You'll only get emptiness. For the first time, one of the council members didn't sound amused. A younger voice, uncertain, murmured, Valerius, is this true? Did you truly save her? Valerius didn't bask in it, he didn't plead. He simply said, yes. That single word landed hard, not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest. The stranger inhaled, and when she spoke again, her pleasant mask had turned into something sharper underneath. Then we will test this, mercy. A new sound entered the room, wheels rolling over stone, something heavy being pushed. Elara's stomach dropped as the object stopped near her, and the air around it felt different, older, colder, humming with a strange pressure. Valerius's voice went tight. No. The elder council member sounded satisfied. The mirror of night has been brought. Elara's pulse roared in her ears. A mirror, she whispered, confused. It doesn't reflect faces, the stranger said softly, almost lovingly. It reflects truth, secrets, motives, the moment a heart lies to itself. Valerius moved closer to Elara, the protective shift in his posture unmistakable. You will not use that on her. The stranger's tone turned sweet again, the way a knife can look pretty in candlelight. Then refuse, my king. Refuse in front of your court. Refuse in front of the old laws. And tomorrow we ride south to teach Briar Hollow what happens when humans trade insults for mercy. Elara's breath caught, the village, her parents, the children who had shared crusts of bread with her when she was small, people who had chosen wrong but people who were still human, still capable of learning. Valerius's voice dropped to a whisper only Elara could hear. Don't do this. It will show you things you can't unhear. Elara's hands tightened around the ribbon at her wrist. She didn't know what seeing would mean for her or what the mirror might do, but she did know what running would mean, letting other people pay the price for her fear. As she took one slow step toward the humming cold. Tell me what to do, she whispered to Valerius, her voice trembling. If I stand before it, what are they really trying to prove? Valerius's answer came like a confession he hated offering. They want the mirror to decide whether you belong to me, he said, barely audible, or whether you belong to the darkness they're trying to drag me back into. Elara's throat tightened as the council fell silent, waiting. The air around the mirror of night seemed to thicken, as if the room itself leaned forward to watch. And then the stranger spoke the words that made Elara's blood run cold, not with gore but with meaning. A step closer, blind girl, she whispered. Let's see what you were meant to become.